Just hit a button, Morty. Give me a beat.
Oh man, okay, alright,
Free my soul, just let it go. I wanna roam on my own, just let it go. Free my soul.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the series on how to flip a house. Today, we're going to get into the top mistakes a first-time flipper can make, and I'm going to tell them to you so you don't do the same mistakes. All right, so here we are in the new studio, so to speak. If you guys have been following along with everything else and all the other videos and on Instagram, you'll know that I have moved my entire life to one spot. This is the house we're in now, the new house. It's got my shop, it's got my storage, it's got this room in particular that I'm gonna build into the podcast room and the studio room. It's a work in progress at the moment, so just bear with me as we get through these videos and I do work on the house to kind of change the studio so it's like real nice and tidy. If you're new here, make sure you hit that subscribe button and hit the bell. That way you can get more information and know when those videos come out. We are sitting here with my energy drink that I can't name, unfortunately. It's, let's just say it starts with a B and ends with a G, and it's not Bang. Colorado company. I would love to tell you what it is, but I can't. So, cheers. All right, so let's get into it. What are the top mistakes that a first-time flipper can make in this market, or in any market, so to speak? But particularly as things are changing and getting kind of crazy now, I'm trying to keep this as current as possible. So let's kind of run through these mistakes that you can make as a first-time flipper to make sure you guys don't do it and understand why not to do these things and move on. So first thing we're going to talk about is make sure you have the money secured. And what I mean by that is if you're doing a hard money loan, if you've got the cash, it's a little bit different. If you got the cash to do the first-time flip and you're not borrowing any money, hey, good for you. That's a great way to go. But if you are going through a hard money lender or some sort of alternative conventional loan to do construction and purchase the property as well, make sure that money is secured first off. Do not start wandering through houses and start searching up on all the MLSs and Zillow, Redfin, and so forth, and then find out you've found one that's going to work and you don't have any money ready and you're going to lose out on the house, because by the time you get through contract, trying to get a bid in there, someone else is going to snatch it up from you because you don't have the money to get going. So go talk to investors, private lenders, whoever it is you're going to get money from. Make sure you have that secured. You got that money in the bag first, all right? Second thing, don't look for a unicorn. And what do I mean by unicorn? So in this respect, it's same with first-time home buyers. You're not going out and finding that perfect flip, right? Especially your first one. You want to keep this as simple and low-key as possible. Meaning you're not going to go find a project that's going to need a second-story addition or an addition off the back, or you're going to build a garage. Keep it simple. We're talking about like slapping lipstick on the pig, and you're just doing paint, trim, maybe some new doors, maybe a bathroom, flooring, so forth like that. Keep it as low-key as possible. You're out there looking for a unicorn or that perfect flip on your first one, you're going to get destroyed. So make sure you keep your hopes down a little bit and get more versed with flipping. Then you can move on to searching for the magical unicorn. Actually, you should never do that, but at least you can start building that base from your first one. So set that bar a little bit lower. You're not looking for a unicorn. All right, the next thing we want to talk about is making sure that if you don't have a real estate license currently, go out and get your real estate license, because in this business, that is bonus material. That is saving you a bunch of money. It can actually make you money on the other end. And if you haven't checked out the other videos on how to flip a house, make sure you go back and watch that, because some of that stuff is explained in there on how important it is to have your real estate license. You don't need a real estate license to flip houses, but it's so key. However, first flip, no license, make sure you have representation when you go to sell the house at the end of the project. When you're done and you go stick that sign in the yard, make sure you actually have listing with an agent, okay? And the reason being more than anything is they're going to have a way more reach to get out to the general public your project better than you will without having a license and access to the MLS. You don't necessarily need one on the front end. If you want to do your own negotiations, go for it if you want to. However, you're not really going to save yourself any money on the front end, because that commission 95% of the time is going to be paid by the listing agent, meaning it's coming out of the seller proceeds when you purchase your property to start the project. So never hurts to have a realtor on both ends, but at the very least on your first project, with everything that you're going to be thrown out and faced with at the beginning, make sure you have a listing agent at the back end to get that property sold as fast as possible. Remember, you got holding costs, you got all kinds of things to pay. You want that thing off the market and cash in hand as fast as you can get it, okay? So, with that being said, you want to stay off the television. Get your information through our videos, get your information through other people that have been flipping homes. Go get a mentor if possible. Get your information, as we say, off the streets. Do not watch TV and think that what they're doing on TV is going to apply in any sort of way to what you're going to be doing, especially on your first flip. All right, next mistake, and probably one of the most common ones that I see, is overinflating or changing, skewing the ARV, or the after repair value. If you guys don't know what the ARV is yet, go back, watch the other videos. I did a video on ARV, explains how to calculate it, what it is, and how to get a real one. It's a pretty simple formula. You can check that out at the end of the video. There's a link to it, and just go back and check that. So we're not going to get into that ARV, but the common mistake I see with this is that you run through your entire formula, and that ARV isn't as high as you'd like it to be, or it's at the top end of the market for that neighborhood, and you think, well, if I just change a little bit around, I can get a little bit more profit. I can squeeze a little more profit out of this project, and it's gonna work out in the end. That's a huge mistake, and the reason why is if that ARV isn't running off those formulas that I showed you, and you are not set on a real value, you're gonna get slapped in the face, because at the end, it's gonna come back and the market's gonna dictate, just like you should have figured out in the beginning, what that ARV is. And if you start changing numbers around just to make a project work and make that spread work, it's no bueno, you're gonna get slapped. So make sure you stay with your ARV. If that project doesn't work or the numbers don't look right, walk away from it. If you're under contract, you can get out. If you haven't made an offer yet, don't bother, don't waste your time. Don't overinflate that ARV. It's important that you stick with those numbers. So the next thing I'm gonna talk about is not skimming the budget. That kind of goes in play with kind of overinflating the ARV. But what I'm talking about here is you're running through your budget of all the things you're going to be doing to the house, and you get to a point where the numbers are not really playing out on the budget, and there's a few things that may be more expensive. And let's just say you've gotten some estimates from some contractors, and those subcontractors give you a number higher than you thought it was going to cost, and you start talking yourself into, well, if I change this number or that number around a little bit, I don't think I'll spend that much money on this, and you reduce your budget, your construction costs. All of a sudden, well, that nice little number on the spreadsheet is looking bigger, and you're going to make more money. Bad idea. The numbers that are in there are hard numbers that you're either going to get from, and hopefully from, your subcontractors and people doing the trade work, okay? And stick with those numbers. And a lot of times you may even want to go ahead and give yourself a contingency like we talked about before, and actually run those numbers up a little bit higher. You want to make sure you have enough money to do this project and still make money, okay? So keep that in mind. You don't want to skim that budget. If anything, in this type of business, you want to be a pessimist, not an optimist, when it comes to the budget itself. You can be an optimist knowing you're going to make money and you're going to be successful in this whole thing. But as far as construction goes and flipping goes, you want to be a pessimist on the budget and say, all right, if it's going to cost 10 grand, it could cost 12. So maybe I should make that $12,000 just to kind of fluff it. Don't be optimistic and think that number is going to actually go down. Almost every time it's going to go up. So make sure you're a pessimist when it comes to the budget. Do not skim on it. All right. So the other big mistake that I see along with using or changing the ARV is incorrectly calculating your CMAs. And the CMA, again, is in another video that we did. That's the comparable market analysis. And the mistake I see here most of the time is you get into a neighborhood and you find a property that could be worthy of a flip, and you start running your CMA and you're not getting enough information, right? You're not getting enough of the sold comps to help you dictate that ARV. And so you start going outside that neighborhood or outside that half-mile-ish radius, and you start pulling numbers from other houses in other neighborhoods, or they're not quite like kind properties, right? And what happens is that CMA can get skewed and you don't get to a real ARV or after repair value. So that comparable market analysis actually is not accurate because you're using houses that are not exactly the same, or they're in the wrong neighborhoods. In any market, neighborhood to neighborhood, these prices can drastically change. Like we talked about real estate from way back when, location, 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 right? So one neighborhood to another could dictate, even if it's the exact same house, what the cost of that house is actually going to be. Make sure you stick with that neighborhood. And if you can't find enough comparables, it, again, like we talked about before in other videos, it may be time to walk away because you don't have enough information to dictate. And if it's on your first flip, that's the last thing you want to do, is start pretending you know what you're doing, right? So make sure your CMA is accurate, all right? All right, the next big thing I want to talk about, and this is something that I've taught other people in the past, and we've kind of coined this phrase at Built by Bailey's as well, and that's losing the battle between worth versus value. And what does that mean? So worth versus value, okay? You're doing a project, it's amazing, you're getting to the end, you know what your ARV is gonna be, and the worth to you is a certain number you wanna sell it for. But the market, meaning all the buyers that come through and look at it and wanna make an offer on it, are gonna dictate the actual value. And even if you've dialed in your numbers and you've done flipping for many years, or you've been in real estate for a long time as an agent, and you set that list price at a certain value, market can change while you're even working on the project, and that value is going to be dictated by the buyer making the offers. And if you're getting consistent values or offers that are below what you're listing the house at, it's actually not worth that price. It's the value you have to sell it for, not the worth. So don't lose that value over it. And we used to talk about this all the time. Take your ego out of this business. You may think it's worth more than $500,000, but if the highest offer you've gotten was $500,000, or even less, that's the actual value of the house. And you want to make sure you're moving properties as fast as you can. So make sure that you take an offer that's going to make you money if you've done all your homework correctly, but it may be not as much as you were hoping to get. It's still a sale. Take your profit, move on to the next one. Especially your first house, you want to get in, you want to get out, make your money. It's not going to be your most profitable house, I promise. Move on to the next one. You've learned your lessons, and you can go on and continue with projects. You don't want to be on the other end where you get destroyed and dumped, and now you owe money at closing and you're buried and you can't ever do this again. So don't lose that Don't lose that battle between worth versus value, okay? All right. When you're doing the renovations themselves, the design aspect, make sure you're doing these renovations on the design side that's towards the general public and not necessarily the stuff that you like in particular. You cannot personalize these projects. You can add a little flair here or there. It's got to be subtle though. Remember, you're selling to a bunch of people and only looking for one buyer. You're not selling to yourself and hoping everybody likes your opinion of something. Everybody has their own opinion of what looks good and what doesn't. But what you have to do is start looking at all the other houses in the area and what's been sold and what the consistent makeup or design of those houses really is. Stick with that model. You may not like it, but that's what's selling. So go ahead and do those things, those features, use those materials. Stay away from too much personalization in the house. Big problem, because you end up not finding any buyers at all, because you may be the greatest designer in the world, but everyone in that neighborhood, they want standard granite, they want standard subway tile, they like gray paint on the walls, and they like 5-inch trim with no detail. So that's what you have to do. Keep that in mind. Again, remove your ego and do what everybody else is looking for. All right, last but not least, the mistake that I see a lot of times with first-time flippers is money being spent on the wrong items of the project. Even after you've run through your budget and you know what you're going to do per scope of work, and you know based on estimates how much money is going to be spent on these items, you may get in there and start framing something up or remove a wall, and you go, oh, I have a better idea now. And you move more of that money or reallocate that money from another budget item to this new idea that you have in this house. Therefore, removing things that need to be done versus things that maybe you want to be done. i.e. it needs a new roof and you don't pay for it. It needs a new water heater, you don't pay for it. Mechanical system needs to be upgraded, or electrical system, right? And you decide, oh, I'll try and skim by with those not being done and just see who offers me what, and maybe they don't leave that in the inspection objection and I'll be okay. Huge mistake. That can get you into so much trouble. You want to make sure that money's being allocated to the things that need to be done first. And like we've talked about before, the MEPs, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and roof, that stuff has to be looked at first and dealt with first before you can get into anything else. You're going to most likely find some other issues you haven't accounted for yet once you start opening up walls, moving things around, and those items have to be dealt with first, which means you may end up spending more money than you estimated, and you'll have even less money allocated towards the things you want to do. So my cousin and I, when we were running these things for years, we'd always have this argument of, where's the money going? If I'm spending money on things that I have to fix and have to upgrade, structure, whatever it is, his budget, his end of the design side would get depleted very quickly in some projects because we came into the world of uh-ohs, and I have to spend money on uh-ohs before I can spend money on yays, which is the nice stuff. So make sure that you don't start reallocating money, especially early on in the project or your first flip, more importantly, and you're sticking to your guns, so to speak, which is the budget, and you don't start moving things around and reallocating money, okay? Keep that in mind. Another thing to remember is if you're doing a project and it's your first one and you need to pull permits, pull the permits. Do not mess around with trying to do things under the table on weekends and avoid the city and municipalities, okay? You got to pull permits. And if you don't pull permits, it's going to catch you on the back end when everybody asks about the work that you've advertised. And if you're under contract and a good realtor asks for those permits and you don't have them, they're going to squeeze you, which means you're going to end up losing more money. They're basically going to offer less and say, we'll only pay this much for it, or you need to provide us with permits and we want out. So keep that in mind. Spend money where it needs to be spent, and don't reallocate money that you're not planning on doing in the first place. Again, you want to keep this simple, and more importantly, as sweet and smooth as possible on your first project, okay? So keeping those mistakes in mind, I don't want you guys making any of those. I don't want to have any emails come in saying, hey, I did this or this, and it was something we talked about here. Watch the videos, take notes, email me with questions, Shane@BaileyCustomHome.com. I want to thank again Colt Real Estate. Hit up Lending Tips on Instagram as well, and me on Instagram. If you haven't followed me yet, or Lending Tips, @Lending Tips, @Shane Bailey Builder. Go subscribe to the channel. Go subscribe to Colt Real Estate. I appreciate everything, you guys. Till the next one, let's go get some money.
Free my soul, just let it go. I wanna roam on my own, just let it go. Free my soul, just let it go. I cause a storm when I'm at home, just let it go.
Sipping in the sea, I don't know what this means. Spilling liquor all over my jeans. Who would've known I'd be battling a fiend? Is this my fate in this hip-hop scene? High like a